So the Kansas City Chiefs quietly stopped doing something that helped fuel their dynasty years, and now they may be about to return to it. Welcome back to All Chiefed Up. Thanks for being here. The Chiefs have a proven formula, an older, proven veteran edge rusher late in his career to stabilize the pass rush. When they followed it, they had deep playoff runs and even won some Lombardies. When they stopped, the pass rush became less dependable. Could Cam Jordan be the next answer here?
Half the Chiefs kingdom is obsessed with bringing back Tyreek Hill, or maybe even getting a new weapon like Stephon Diggs for Patrick Mahomes. And I totally see the value in that, but we've got a different conversation over on the other side of Chiefs kingdom, and they're wanting a veteran leader on this defensive line. They don't think we've done enough at edge rusher, me included, a little bit, me included. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about Cam Jordan. He's the big name out there right now. Is the fit right with the Chiefs? Is the money right? With OTAs just a few days away, is the timing going to be right? We just learned today that the Saints said they had an offer on the table for Cam Jordan. So is Brett Veach actually going to hijack that Saints offer? We're going to have to talk about that today, Steve. So what do you think? Are you ready to bring in Cam Jordan, or do you think we should pass on it?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense because the Chiefs under Brett Veach and Steve Spagnuolo, they kind of found repeated success with a very specific formula when it comes to the defensive line. Mike, they have the elite interior disruptor with Chris Jones. They've always had some sort of young ascending edge rusher with like Karlaftis, if you want to go way back, like Frank Clark. But they always brought in this veteran closer or some type of stabilizer. We can go back to Terrell Suggs. We can start with him back in 2019, Mike. They brought him in after the Arizona Cardinals waived him. I think on our end, Alex Okafor was hurt. The pass rush depth was pretty thin, and the Chiefs were making a Super Bowl push. And they brought in Terrell Suggs. Now, keep in mind here, this wasn't prime Terrell Suggs, guys. This was Terrell Suggs at 37 years old, but the Chiefs still wanted him. Because there was still value there, right? I mean, this is a guy that was a former Defensive Player of the Year. He was a Super Bowl champion. He had played in huge moments before. Here he is. He could come in here and play meaningful downs in meaningful football and actually be able to help this entire defensive line, not just show out stat-wise, but to be able to come in and stabilize and actually help some of these younger guys as well. And I think that was the first time that you really saw the Chiefs take that formula, and it worked perfectly. They ended up winning the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah, you mentioned Alex Okafor. He was 27, 28 at the time. So they were already on the later end. They were experimenting with maybe finding some veteran out there on the edge that could set the edge. Terrell Suggs come in. He was 36, 37. I'm not for sure how old he was, but 37. He was up there.
Yeah.
They experimented with Carlos Dunlap for a few years. He was in his early 30s. We even seen them go get Melvin Ingram. They actually traded the Pittsburgh Steelers for Melvin Ingram back in 2021. He was 32 at the time, Steve, and we had a horrible defense at that time, and he kind of came in, and although his stats were off the charts, he only had 15 combined tackles, 5 QB hits, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. It wasn't like he was just tearing it up, but the attention he was able to give on passing downs allowed Chris Jones to get back and to do a familiar role that he was comfortable with, and it changed our defense.
Melvin Ingram might be the strongest argument for getting Cam Jordan. Straight up. I mean, the Chiefs that year, it's 2021, their defense was nearly broken. They were 4-4. The defense was freaking terrible. They had no pass rush. Chris Jones was being shoved outside over and over again just to try to create some kind of a pass rush. And it just felt very, very shaky at 4-4. They brought in Melvin Ingram, Mike. And like you said, while his stats weren't insane, the effect was massive. Even though they only got to the AFC Championship game that year, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. I think you saw the immediate effects of bringing in somebody like Melvin Ingram. Our defense completely changed throughout that season. They became more reliable on third downs. They got more pressure on quarterbacks. Chris Jones was able to produce more when he had a guy on the outside that could help out. And not to mention, just another older guy that can help some of the younger guys on the defensive line. It's always good to have an extra coach out there on the field, isn't it? Especially when you have a bunch of young guys that are trying to prove themselves and trying to figure out the NFL. And we're in that exact position right now. They just drafted Omar Norman Lott and Ashton Gillotte last year. This year, Peter Woods Woods and R. Mason Thomas. So we have a lot of youth on the defensive line. I think it'd be great to bring in Cam Jordan to just help those guys get kind of situated in the NFL and teach them the right way to go about things. And just having that extra guy out there on the field with them, that could be huge.
Right. We had a little bit of breaking news with that Cam Jordan thing just over the past few days. The New Orleans Saints general manager, Mickey Loomis, actually confirmed that they put an offer on the table for Cam Jordan. That kind of took over the news cycle, and everybody was excited about it. And a lot of Saints fans want him back. He actually said at one time he didn't want to be nothing but a New Orleans Saints defensive end. He wanted to retire there, but it seems as though he's not taking this offer, and that's why Loomis made it known, hey, there's an offer on the table, almost a little bit of a backhanded pressure, if you will. But I don't know what's going to happen here. Cam Jordan himself has said that he wants a contract that matches his value, and he referred to the 10.5 sacks he put up last season. Steve, that's crazy because we think if you get Cam Jordan, he's going to have to come in looking to be like, look, I've got tons of sacks. I want tons of Super Bowls. Let's go get at least one with Kansas City. And you would think that would be the draw here, or at least going to somebody like the Rams or somebody like that he thinks is up there. But the fact that he's still wanting to possibly say, hey, I want people that know my worth, if he means that in financial contract terms, which means he wants a lot of money to come in and play for 1 year or 2 years at 37, 38 years old, he may be in for a rude awakening because it's not happened just yet. I would love to know what the Saints have on the table and how much they're offering, because I couldn't see us giving him any more than maybe 8 to 10 mil with a little bit of incentives.
That's pushing it.
Right.
I mean, he can want in one hand and shit in the other, brother, but he ain't getting paid a lot of money. It's just not happening. You're going to be 38 years old. No one's giving you a bunch of money to come in for 1 year. I understand that he had 10.5 sacks last year, so a pretty good production for a guy his age. But if you go back to the 2 previous years, he kind of disappeared in 2024 and 2025. Very modest stats there. 2023, 24. 25 is where he came back with the 10.5 sacks.
Right.
But here's the thing, man. I think $6 to $8 million makes the most sense with some incentives. And I don't think he can be asking for that much more. And I don't think anyone's going to give him much more than that. But here's the appeal of the Chiefs, right? If he thinks he could chase the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, that's always what everybody says. Oh, well, maybe they'll want to chase the Super Bowl and come to Kansas City. That's not yet been a thing, but maybe it could be in this situation. It's a guy that, hey, I'm on the back end of my career. I want a ring. This seems like the best place for me to go where I can be the most useful and help this defense get to where it needs to be to go win a championship. Maybe that does make sense for him. And I think, I think it makes sense for both sides of the table, Mike, because like we already mentioned, the other 2 guys that Chiefs did this with, you mentioned Carlos Dunlap. They did it with him. He wasn't a guy that came in here and changed the defense altogether. He was a guy that came in here and added a little bit of stability, a little bit of depth. He didn't have to play that much, but guess what? It was a guy that Steve Spagnuolo could trust. It was a veteran guy. You get to January, and all of a sudden you got a guy that knows exactly how things go, and you can trust him out there. That's what Cam Jordan needs to be willing to offer to a team. Not much more than that. Right.
And look, the Chiefs definitely need a Cam Jordan style pass rusher on the team. Somebody that can set the edge. He's 6'4", 6'5", 287, 290, somewhere in that range. He's a big guy. He's going to be able to hold up on first and second down, and he's going to still offer you something because last year, again, even at that older age, 10.5 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. I think he had 15 QB hits. That's still pretty elite in this league. He played all 17 games last year, and I think over his career, 15 years in the league, and I don't even think he's missed but maybe 2 or 3 games overall. So he's like an Iron Man type player. So you got to say, look, if we fork up the 8 to 10 million with incentives, it's possible he takes that because he feels like he is a healthy enough guy that's never had to battle injuries and he's still got something in the tank. Maybe he'll take that contract. Maybe he won't. I don't know. But the only thing I'll say about this is we need somebody on that defensive line that can offer what you said, that coach on the field, somebody that can help Chris Jones tomorrow. We don't need a guy that's just developing. And it looks like over the past few years, the Chiefs have went back more into that developmental, Ashton Gillotte, Omar Norman Lott last year. Nothing really major out there when it comes to spending money or finding an older vet. This year, they drafted R. Mason Thomas, Peter Woods. Still not really looking into the vet as far as we know, except for this Cam Jordan thing has caught a little bit of steam. So Is this something they did do? Yes. I don't think that R. Mason Thomas body type holds up well enough to play consistently on first and second down in the Spagnuolo defense. And without having that and getting these guys in third and long situations, you don't get to see the amazing exotic blitz packages that that Spags is known for, and getting these pass rushers to pin their ears back and go get them. You need somebody that can come in and help Karlaftis and Chris Jones and all these guys on first and second downs. Steve, we've talked about it over and over again. The Chiefs are trying to get more run heavy. The league has shifted more run heavy over the past few years, and the Chiefs kind of wanted to be, when the league was high flying, we wanted to get the edge rushers that were edge setters. And now that the league's starting to get back to the ground and pound and running the ball more, now we're trying to get the more pass rushers. So it feels like we're always a little bit behind there for some reason, but it has been working. I'll give them that. Chiefs Kingdom, we have officially partnered with Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy sports platform. It's distinctly separate from a traditional sports book, and it's the absolute best way to add some extra heat to every single game. The app is incredibly easy to use. You aren't playing against sharks. You're just picking more or less on an individual player projection. Think Kenneth Walker's total rushing yards per game, more or less. Travis Kelce's total touchdowns in 2026, only 4, more or less. You just pick at least 2 players, lock in your lineup, and you're in the action. Prize Picks is available in most states, including California, Texas, Florida, and right here in the heart of America, Missouri and Kansas. One thing we love is the new public feed. You can actually find and follow us directly on the app at All Chiefed Up. You'll be able to see our live lineups and tell our picks before we even post them here on the channel or our other social media platforms. So if you haven't joined yet, just download the app and use code HMA when you sign up. When you play your first $5 lineup, you're going to get $50 in lineups instantly. Click the link in the description, use code HMA, and remember to always play responsibly. Now back to the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we're talking about signing Cam Jordan, bringing him in here, I think we have to ask ourselves, what happened the moment the Chiefs stopped? When they stopped that trend that they had, that proven formula, which was right after Carlos Dunlap, how did the freaking defense look for the last few years? What was our pass rush like?
I mean, the pass rushes went down over the past few years. You're right.
Absolutely, because the Chiefs,
totals,
around that time, the Chiefs kind of largely abandoned the whole veteran edge formula, and they went with youth development, internal upside, stuff like that, which is great. They went and invested in Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who is still developing 3 years into the league. We don't even know what we have with him. And then they, like you said, they went and got R. Mason Thomas. They got Ashton Gillotte last year. That's great. We got a lot of upside, but we have no consistency. That's the problem. And I think when you bring in one of these veterans like Cam Jordan, he would bring in some consistency to the defensive line. So that way guys like R. Mason Thomas have the ability to get in there and progress at a natural pace for a rookie and get to where he needs to be. You mentioned Cam Jordan. He's like a 3-down type guy. He was playing 3 downs last year, 37 years old. He can do that. He can do it this year. I don't know at what level. But, I mean, I still think that he would be valuable for the Chiefs, the fact they have a guy that can play all 3 downs and stuff the run. Because R. Mason Thomas, I don't think he's going to be able to walk into the NFL and do that. Like you said, he's undersized and everything else. I think he's going to be great at rushing the passer. But we need a guy that can do all that stuff and a guy that can kind of set the tone there and even help R. Mason Thomas become a good run defender. That way, after he's gone, R. Mason Thomas could maybe be a guy that plays 3 downs instead of just 1.
Right. Well, the Chiefs have still been able to get to the Super Bowl.
Patrick Mahomes covering it all up.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there is some validity to that, of course. And I think that, Spags actually coached Cam Jordan for a single season back in 2012 when he was the defensive coordinator with the Saints. So there's some familiarity there. I don't know what they're going to do, but we've covered a lot of positives. And one of the main positives is, with Cam Jordan, you've got a veteran leader on the field, off the field, a locker room presence, somebody that's going to be a coach on the field. He can help the younger guys like Gillotte, Peter Woods, R. Mason Thomas. All these guys can learn from him. We don't have to put them in such big roles right off the bat and expect them to hold up versus NFL, offensive tackles, 500, 600 snaps in a season. That's tough on people, especially Peter Woods, he's battled some injuries. R. Mason Thomas has had some hammy injuries. Ashton Gillotte's not the biggest guy. We've seen Omar Norman-Lott last year battling the ACL. So you always want depth. You can never have too many pass rushers in this league. They are a premium. Now, if I want to get to a little bit of the negatives here about Cam Jordan, is I think there's a little bit. I think the price tag, which I already talked about, he may want too much from what we're able to offer. And again, we've already had a video talking about how we can't sign our rookies to this point. We still need people to convert some money over in these contract situations. I think that you've put a lot of draft capital into the defensive line. I've been not critical of the draft capital to the defensive line, but I've said that you need to pair that with a little older veteran leadership to get immediate stuff. Now, a lot of people's going to say, well, if you bring him in and you give Cam Jordan 60, 70, 80% of the snaps, these guys aren't going to be able to develop. And you're right, because even Cam Jordan, they were trying to bring down his snap count in New Orleans over the past few years, and I'm pretty sure he kind of snapped back at them about those snap counts with, his ego was like, hey, don't throttle me here. So I don't know if he'd come in and be willing to play a team, 50% of the snaps, let's hold you over, make sure you're good at the playoff time. I don't know if he's willing to play ball like that. So there are some negatives to bringing him in for sure. I don't know where I'm falling on it ultimately. I feel like the positives outweigh the negatives though for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just makes sense. It really does, because right now we are hoping that Felix Anudike-Uzomah can do something finally. We are hoping that R. Mason Thomas can come in here and be a closer right off the rip. We're hoping that a lot of our depth emerges. All of these young talent, they come out and they play great. But that's hopes. We don't know none of that. None of that's proven. What is proven is Cam Jordan can play football. This guy's done it over several years, Mike. I mean, he's had probably 8 seasons that he's had double-digit sacks in his career. I think it just makes sense to get back to that formula. That way we're not lacking in pass rush by any means, because over the last couple of years, you brought it up, like, well, the Chiefs still managed to win even after, they kind of abandoned that formula on the defensive side. That's true. And the defense hasn't necessarily been bad over the last couple of years, but what they've been bad at is putting pressure on the quarterback. And if you don't do that in the NFL, you're going to have poor third down conversion. You're going to, there's so many things that we have watched the Chiefs suffer because they can't put any pressure on a quarterback. We've had to watch mediocre quarterbacks dice up our defense and our secondary because they can stand in the pocket for 10 seconds and eat a Snickers bar and then finally find somebody open. We've seen tight ends just absolutely wreck the Chiefs defense the last couple of years at a record pace. I mean, just like, what was it, last year or the year before, when, Isaiah Likely and some of those other guys, they just had the biggest days they've ever had against the Chiefs because we just suck. We couldn't get any pressure on a quarterback. I think it all boils down to you have to be able to fix that one portion of the defense, because Patrick Mahomes did cover up a lot of that, the defensive stuff, a lot of the offensive stuff the last couple of years. And the Chiefs managed to win a couple of Super Bowls with bad receiving rooms and a defense that couldn't necessarily get a team off the field on third down. But he can't continue to do all that. Like, why not fix the small things that you can fix? And I think this simple formula of going out and getting a proven guy to get in here and help the pass rush alleviate some of the pressure from Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. Why the hell not? It makes total sense to me.
Right. I'll play devil's advocate for just one or two more points, touching on what you just said. And again, I think I'm on the side that I would like to have Cam Jordan if he comes in at a good price, because I do think
it's very dependent on that, right?
Right. And I do think that the days of us bringing in those guys to help get us over the hump in some of these years, I do think that was a fun era that we had going. And over the past few years, it seems like we've just shifted more to like, look, we're going to draft and develop. We're going to take our lumps. We're going to go on. We haven't really done that. And maybe that's another reason they're just not looking so hard here. They're just letting the draft and development. But when you had that miss with FAU that year, he is now, like you said, 3 years in. He's not really panned out. That was kind of a bust on a first round pick. You had BJ Thompson right around that era. You had, Keandre Colburn in that era, somewhere in that time frame. So we've not really hit on a lot, and I think it's kind of slowed down the process from what they're wanting to do. But you mentioned a lot of the, we got to get after the passer, and that is 100% true. if we get to the playoffs, who are the quarterbacks we like to face? We play mobile quarterbacks. We have to beat Josh Allen to get through it. We have to beat Lamar Jackson to get through it. That's just the way it is. I don't know if a 37, 38-year-old pass rusher, and this is me playing devil advocate, I don't know if he's going to be the fastest to get to those mobile quarterbacks if we need him to, because we know that over the age of 35, maybe even over the age of 32, 33, pass rushers can fall off a cliff like overnight, it seems. So he could show up looking good at the beginning of the season. By the end of the season, he could be completely just drained. So I don't know if that's the route Brett Veach wants to go, because he may say, look, by the time it's getting to the time where we need him, he may not be able to provide that quick pass rush we need. And he is now taking snaps from the Peter Woods, the Ashton Gillottes, the R. Mason Thomases, and maybe we just need to play the long game here. And that's where I'll play the devil's advocate there. If I had to say I didn't want Cam Jordan, it would be just strictly for that reason.
Well, I actually think that's the exact reason you need a guy like him, is for January football. Because you get into the playoffs with some inexperienced players that aren't that consistent, and all of a sudden it looks a lot different than having an old veteran in there that has been there, done that, has a high football IQ, has seen all this stuff a million different times. They don't necessarily have to be putting the heat on the quarterback every play. And somebody like Cam Jordan, I think when you look throughout the entire season, you don't want to give him more than 30, 40 snaps a game anyway. Throughout the entire year, you're not going to wear him out throughout the season. He's going to be rotational. And then you get to January, and I think that's where these guys have always showed up. Even though it wasn't on the stat sheet, you still had guys that you could rely on that had been there, done that, and have been doing it for years. So, I mean, here's the thing. We could be fair about it. Like you said, he's 37. That's probably the biggest concern, right? 37. Yeah. Age cliffs happen. He could fall off, next season and not do a damn thing, even though he had 10.5 sacks last year. That completely could happen.
Even a small injury at that age.
We're not going to bring him in here and ask him to play 800 snaps next season. That's insane. Like, you're just not going to do that.
I agree. But I did bring up the point that he had his snaps reduced in New Orleans, and he kind of argued with it. So is he going to come in and play ball?
That's fine. I think it's all about the mentality here, because, like you already mentioned, it depends on the price. You get a cheap ring chasing deal? Absolutely. Let's do this thing. But you have to be in that mindset that you're going to come in here. You're going to be rotational. You're going to be a stabilizing veteran presence, and you're going to be there come January when we need smart, experienced football players in the playoffs. That's what your job is, Cam Jordan. If that's what you want to do, let's do this deal. Right. If he wants an expensive deal, no, sorry. Right. We're not going to do it.
If he wants a lot of money, he wants to be the superstar, he thinks he can still do it at 38. He don't want to come in, take a reasonable contract, play ball, help the young guys develop, do the snap counts he needs to stay consistently healthy throughout the year and be effective in the playoffs. If he don't want to do that, he would rather be the big superstar and make all the money. Those are two different things. You're not going to find both in Kansas City.
No. But I really do think that the Chiefs should get back to this. I mean, it's a proven formula. To me, it's kind of wild that you would step away from something that's been working. And I understand that maybe not all the circumstances have been there the last couple of years to find a guy like that. But now you have that opportunity. You have a bunch of young, promising guys that you just drafted in the last couple of years. And I just think it would be great to get a guy in here that not only brings you the experience and somebody you can trust in, say, playoff run. Let's hope we're doing the playoff run again like we used to, a couple years ago. Let's hope so. But I think that thinking about January matters, because that's the thing with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. We shouldn't have seasons like last year. You should not. And we shouldn't be thinking about that going forward. We shouldn't be thinking, the small time over here, like, oh, well, we got to win 7 games. We won 6 last year. We got to get better. That's not the way to look at this. We have to look at this as we're still in a dynasty run. Yeah, there was a little hiccup, but we're going to get back on it, and we're going to plan for the future. We just got to have we could get this older veteran. They could play fewer snaps. They could have fresher legs come January. They're smarter. They know situational football, and all that stuff matters, dude. And I think that's just absolutely something that could help this team and help the pass rush, because that's been the main problem with our defense the last couple of years. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a guy that puts a lot of last year on the defense. I think our offense was the main problem. But the defense absolutely sucked at getting teams off the field on third down. And why was that? because they could not put any pressure on a quarterback. So let's go alleviate some of that this year. That would help the DVs out too. You just had Trent walk, you had Jalen walk. Now we had to replenish that with a lot of young guys. Let's take some heat off them. Let's figure out how to get after quarterback and make it easier for everybody.
No, I've been saying this from the beginning. I don't have nothing against Peter Woods. I have nothing against Gillotte, nothing against R. Mason Thomas, nothing against Omar Norman Lott. I wanted a lot of those players in a Chiefs uniform. I think where it becomes a little touchy is a lot of people think that, you got to give them a chance. And I fully believe that, but I see drafts as 2, 3, 4 years in advance is how good they are and what you're building for. They don't necessarily have to be great this year, but you need to bring in somebody this year that can be great this year, and you don't have to stress about it. I think that helps, and if it can also aid in their development, I think that's a win too. I'm big time bringing in Cam Jordan for the right price. Almost wanted to call him Cam Jackson for some reason. I have no idea why that was. But yeah, if you can get Cam Jordan for the right price, I think it's a win-win. Brett Veach should be trying it. Now, I don't know if he can make it fit in this cap situation. That might be the holdup here. Maybe Cam just wants a lot more money than they think he's worth. And in that case, don't do it. Don't sacrifice your dynasty build that you have going, your blueprint, to bring in an older guy like that.
Yeah, for sure. You guys get down in the comments and let us know if you noticed the pass rush kind of fall off a little bit after they abandoned that formula after Carlos Dunlap. Also, do you think they should get back to it and bring Cam Jordan in here on a decent deal? We obviously don't want to pay him too much, but if he were to be at the $6 to $8 million, would you take him back? Do you think it's smart? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And right here on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you found any value in today's video, and we'll catch you next time. Go Chiefs.